Hey friends, just so you know, there are a couple of incidences of swearing in this episode. Nothing egregious, but if you're listening around children or folks who don't enjoy hearing swear words, you might want to pause for now and catch up at another time. Okay, let's get on with the show.
What you think smells good is not the same thing as what smells good on you or what wears well on your body due to your like mysterious body chemistry or something.
Hello and welcome to One Cool Thing, a podcast from indie game studio Die Gute Fabrik, hosted by me, Hannah Nicklin. One Cool Thing is a podcast speaking with people in and around video games about one cool thing not from games, which is really fascinating them right now. We'll introduce them and their practice, talk about the one cool thing that they've brought to the conversation, and consider how it's shaping how they think about their work. It's a chance to hear more about the practices of cool folks working in and around games, and hopefully somewhere where we can all reflect on how we think about how we make things. So, without further ado, let me introduce our next guest. Welcome, Nicole He. Nicole He is an independent game developer and creative technologist based in New York. And as well as directing two whole unannounced video games right now, Nicole's work as a creative technologist uses digital technology to explore questions of modern living through and with that technology. So from True Love Tinder Robot, which swipes left or right for you, true love guaranteed, to one of my favorites, Invisible Roommates, which uses AR to personify the devices you share your home with as tiny little characters who send paper airplanes between themselves when they communicate. Nicole also teaches at NYU and enjoys things like cooking and powerlifting, and is the person from whom I've garnered the most skincare secrets from over the past few years, as I, an elder millennial brought up in an era of Maybelline Matte Mousse, tries to get to grips with what it means to look nicely shiny. Nicole, how did that intro feel to you? Anything you want to add, amend, dispute, or share the secrets of your skincare?
Oh man, no, that's great. Though I will say that I haven't been powerlifting as much recently, so if someone sees me on the street, I'm not as like jacked as you would expect. That's why.
Okay, jacked pending is your current sort of status.
Yeah.
So, Nicole, what is the one cool thing that you've brought in for us to sort of consider today?
Okay, so the thing that I am bringing today is fragrance, I guess, as a general concept. And I can get more specific about specific ones, but I'm actually very excited to talk about it because I don't think it's something I've ever really talked about with somebody, especially in this type of context, especially in the context of something like video games. So I'm really excited to talk about it.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to hear you. Like, as I was saying before we started recording, this is probably one of the areas I feel least qualified to speak about out of all of the different things we've chatted about on the podcast this season, not least because I'm pretty allergic to scents. So actually, I live a fairly scent-free life in a kind of perfume sense, at least. I avoid a fair amount, but also because I've never really been interested in sort of curating my scent, I suppose. Probably the closest I've got to thinking about perfume fragrances is reading Perfume, The Story of a Murderer by Patrick Suskind.
Oh,
Did
I
you
don't
ever
know that
see?
one.
It got made into a movie as well. It's technically about a guy who gets really obsessed with people and then kills them to make them into perfumes because he gets just really fascinated with the idea of making perfumes. It is actually really interesting on the process of distilling scents.
I need to check that out.
Yeah, it's actually a really, really good book. It had a strange movie adaptation, and like spoiler, it ends in him making like really a spoiler, like skip forward 30 seconds if you don't want to hear this. The book ends with him making this because he's so interested in the scent of like particularly young women, because obviously it's creepy and is a murderer, and I don't know, that's where a lot of them end up, right? And he distills this like this perfect scent, and it sends the town that he lives in into this fury frenzy orgy that everyone like just like gets completely naked and just it gets really raucous, and then everyone wakes up the next day and pretends it never happened. So, I mean, it's a fun old book. I don't know. But yeah, that is probably the closest I've ever gotten to the fragrance, the practice of capturing fragrances. But as a beginner, I really enjoyed just sort of reading a Wikipedia page on perfume and its history and refinement. Like a lot of it, it seems, has been in the Common Era driven by Arab and Persian chemists, the dilution chemists, and means by which you describe a scent, the categories of scent, all of that stuff. It seems like there's a ton to get into. So, where do you want to start us in amongst all of that?
Sure. Well, maybe I can tell you a bit about my personal scent journey or why I decided to talk about this today with you. Um, so I'm actually totally like a beginner, not an expert. Like I don't know anything. I have not done research about perfume. I don't know the history of perfume. I was not interested in it at all. Up until recently, I would say. Like it's been a kind of interest of mine over the last, I don't know, year and a half, year maybe. And again, I don't know anything. I just want to say that up front. If anyone listening actually knows anything about perfume, I'm sure, yeah, whatever I'm going to say is going to be like completely basic. But I think, okay, so I got COVID in March 2020, and it was very mild for me. I barely, I mean, this was like at the very beginning. It didn't even occur to me that I had COVID at the time. But I did, so I had like a mild cold, like super mild cold, but then I lost my smell and taste for 2 weeks. And this was at the time where that they actually didn't say that yet, or they didn't announce that that was a symptom of COVID yet. So it also wasn't obvious to me what was going on. I was like, basically, I was like drinking coffee, and then suddenly the coffee smelled really bad. Like it smelled like there were chemicals in it or something. And I was like, damn, I guess I must have like, I don't know, put my dish soap in the coffee. I don't know. Something's weird with this coffee. I'm going to make another cup of coffee. So I went and made another cup of coffee, and it also smelled weird. And I was like, okay, I guess it must be the coffee beans. And so I smelled the coffee beans, and they smelled super weird to me. And I spoke to my partner. I was like, dude, what's up with these coffee beans? Can you smell that? And he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. It smells like coffee to me. And I was like, huh, I don't know. Okay. And then 15 minutes later, I couldn't smell anything. It was very strange.
Wow.
Like I went
Yeah.
from like, probably it's when I made the coffee, it smelled normal. And then it smelled really off. And then suddenly it was like there was a switch that was flipped, and I couldn't smell a single thing. And then at that point, I was like, okay, it's probably me. Like, this is kind of weird. I tried to smell like garlic. I tried to like stick my head in the cat litter box. I was like, I don't smell a single thing. And this is really weird. And basically, over the next 2 weeks, it was like going between, weird smells, like coffee smelled weird, onions smelled weird, and then like nothing. Just like sort of randomly, like, yeah, again, like someone's like flipping a switch or something. And then gradually everything sort of came back, and it was all fine in the end. But it made me very suddenly aware of smell in a way that I typically wasn't in my everyday life, right? I think most of us go through life not really thinking about it very much, except in the times where it stands out, usually for a bad reason, right? You're like you smell something bad, you smell the garbage on the hot street in the summertime in New York, walking down the street, for example.
Or someone wearing your ex-boyfriend's scent walks by and you're like, oh no, that guy.
Right, yeah, yeah. Like I think a lot of like perfume memories are quite bad for most people, right? Like because it's like you can smell somebody across the room, it's usually a bad experience for you. And so you don't usually think about it like, I thought about it probably in the context of cooking and food a lot, right? Where I'm like, oh, that smells good. Like cookies baking smells good, or like stuff like that. Or there's specific flowers like lilacs or something, roses that smell nice. But I didn't really think about it very much. But what was true, and I think a lot of people who have lost their sense of smell due to COVID or other reasons, like there was something very strange about not being able to smell. Like it's like the world felt more flat, like less three-dimensional, in a way that's very hard to describe, because I guess you're always smelling stuff, but like not thinking about it, right? Or not conscious of it. But when you lose it, it's like the world is like desaturated. So I think that was a moment that made me actually start to think about smell. And fast forward a bit, I think I was just like with a friend of mine one day shopping, and we walked into a perfume store. I think I don't know how she was feeling, but I was feeling very intimidated because I feel like that's a space where I don't know anything about it. Never wore perfume. Um, but I started smelling things, and I ended up finding one that I smelled, and I was like, this smells really good. Which was I don't know, a new experience for me. So I actually bought it, and brought it home and started wearing it. And that sort of like this is where I began my, I don't know, perfume journey. That perfume is from a brand called Diptyque, and the perfume is called, it's French, L'ombre dans l'eau. So it's like the shadow in the water is what it's called. It was very poetic. And so here's the thing that I think is super fascinating about perfume and why is like interesting to me in the context of stuff that I'm typically interested in. It's like, I'm sure you had this experience when you were reading that book you were describing, where they probably put a lot of words into trying to describe what the perfume was or what the perfumes were in the book. And you can like read those words and sort of think about it, but you still have no fucking idea what it smells like. And you can't know unless you smell it. And I mean, that sounds really basic, but I think it's so different from how we experience so many other things in our lives right now, right? Like, obviously, if I want to listen to a specific like orchestral piece or something, I could go seek out like the Philharmonic playing it or something. And if I can't get that, I can listen to a recording of it, right? And that's like pretty good, like pretty close. Like I'm going to know what that sounds like. If I want to know what like the Mona Lisa looks like or some other piece of visual art, if I can't go and look at it with my own eyes, I can pretty easily find a picture of it on the internet and get a pretty good approximation of it. If I'm if I'm interested in a video game, I can go find some footage on YouTube about it. And I can again get like a sense of what it is. And all these things are different from like the full experience or whatever, the most authentic experience of these things. But with smell, there's nothing. There's no way. It's an undigitizable experience. And as a person who makes like digital media, there's something about that that's so compelling. It's like something that cannot be put into words. It cannot be put into visuals. Like it can't be done in any way. You just have to smell it.
Yeah, and such a complex and efficient piece of information. Like, so take l'ombre dans l'eau. Sorry, French listeners. I just took a look at the description online of the inspiration for this and what it should smell like, right? They say the inspiration for the scent happened when a friend of the founders noticed the alluring aroma of roses and blackcurrant berries on her hands after an afternoon in the garden. The scent was so surprising that the creators wanted to capture all of its dimensions: the herbaceousness of the blackcurrant leaves, the fruity, acidulated accents of their buds, and the floral intensity of the rose. Telling a story of daydreams, a calm river, a summer slumber, the combined scent of roses and blackcurrant berries in the palm of the hand, a nature-filled moment to savor. That's a lot of information for something that you'd get in one sniff.
Yes. And what's so amazing, so like when I took that perfume home, I also, Googled it and I was like curious to figure out like more about it, I guess. And I read that description, but I also discovered this incredible website called Fragrantica. I don't know if that's how you actually say it. It's sort of like a social media website. Like it's like a database forum type of thing for perfume. And what's incredible is people write their own reviews of the perfume, but reviews are so interesting because again, perfume is so personal, right? Everyone experiences it in a different way. And you can sort of describe like the literal things. You're like, okay, I've smelled a rose before. This kind of smells like a rose. Okay, that's one thing. But it's like more interesting to describe it in a more poetic way, like that's more about feelings. And I read this incredible like fan fiction about this perfume. Like this person wrote this entire post like a whole story where they're like, you know, you wake up in the summer day and you put on a crisp white cotton dress and you're barefoot and you walk into your garden, you take your shears and you feel the dirt between your toes and you cut the. This is like this whole story that has like a twist ending. It's like really dark. But I read that and I smell the perfume and I'm like, yeah, yep. That's another thing that's like so interesting about it to me. It's like it's super personal, right? Again, with the analogy of, you know, music or paintings or something like this, we're like, yeah, maybe we experience them a little bit differently individually, but there's still a good, I feel like, a universally agreed upon thing where it's like generally people have the same kind of experience of sound and visuals, like more or less, right? But with smell, it seems so personal and so different for people. Like for some people, it might smell like absolute garbage, like smell horrible. Some people like love how something smells. It's so subjective and unquantifiable. And so our attempts at describing or quantifying this like indescribable, unquantifiable thing is so poetic and so interesting. And that's the piece that is also super interesting to me about it. It's just like so unquantifiable, so personal, and yet we try to describe this experience, our personal experience of something.
Yeah, like almost like untranslatable almost. Like there's a word, there's a really beautiful book on community as being like inexplicable, unavowable is a word that is used in the context of describing the impossibility of community. Like the thing is to try and lean towards people, but you can never truly know them or be them. And community is about that space in between, the attempt to get to them, but the fact that you never can. And there's something similarly there about scent, right? It's untranslatable. Having said that, I wonder if you are able to begin to try and translate a little bit about why this particular scent, the l'ombre dans l'eau, why that particularly, like, is there any reason you feel like that captured you?
So that's an interesting question because there's like these other elements to perfume specifically, right? Which are scents that you wear on your body. Another aspect about perfume that I learned is that what you think smells good is different, is not the same thing as what smells good on you or what wears well on your body due to your like mysterious body chemistry or something. And it's also not the same thing as what other people, like how other people smell something on you as well. So there's just like extra layers of subjectivity. And so, you know, as a person like in my 30s, I feel like I have, at this point in my life, I feel like in most aspects of my life, I have a good understanding of myself in terms of like my self-expression or whatever, or like who I am or what I like, right? Like, this is the kind of music I like. This is my personal style. This is how I like to do my hair, like whatever, stuff like that. But it was interesting to like embark on this like perfume journey where I'm like, what do I like to smell like? I don't know. It's not something where I feel like I've been developing it over the course of my life. It's like, it's a new question for me. So that specific perfume, it drew me in because it just smelled good to me. But I was also lucky that when I tried it and then it waited over time, because it changed, like perfume also changes over time on your body. I also like enjoyed how it smelled on me, which is also kind of a weird thing to think about when that wasn't previously a thing you thought about. So I don't know, there was something about it. And then when I started to like try to like find other perfumes that I liked, it's real trial and error, right? Because you just have no idea. You're like, you read a list of words and you're like, that sounds nice, I guess, but like I have no idea what that actually smells like or what that will smell like on my own body. One thing I did discover, there is, this is one of those things where, again, like, even if you read a lot of perfume stuff, like you read all these like what they call notes in perfume, if you've never like smelled it and someone told you like that is this note, it's still like really hard to know what it is. Like they're like notes of like violet and tuberose and tonka bean, and I'm like, I'm like, I don't actually know what those things are. And that's another one of those like elusive, mysterious things about perfume. It's like, and there's no way for me to know. I can't like watch a YouTube video about it, to like learn, which is how I learn everything these days, right? But I can't do that with perfume. I can't be like, if I literally don't know what tuberose smells like, I don't know how to find out except by like going somewhere and then like trying to physically smell tuberose, but like it's anyway. So there's this like journey process of also figuring out, even with the descriptions, like what those actually are mapped to smells, and then how those smells map onto my own body. And I have started to figure out what I like in terms of perfume for myself. And so perfume, again, this is so basic stuff that like anyone who knows anything is going to just be like, yeah, whatever. But I think there's like different like categories, like basic categories of perfume. There's like floral, so things that smell like flowers. There's like what they call, I think, gourmand is a category with things that smell like food. Well, like, like vanilla, chocolate, like stuff like that. There's like fruity, and then there's like green, I guess, which is like things that smell like plants. There's also, I think, sort of like powdery kinds of smells, which I think of. I feel like when I think of old school perfume or like an old lady perfume or something like that, I think of these like powdery, baby powder kind of smells. I think I like green smells. Like I like things that smell like the dirt, like a forest. And so that is something I've learned about myself over the last year and a half. And yeah, I just feel like it's one of those things, like, as I was saying, as you get older, it feels like there's not that many things to learn about yourself. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's ways we can learn about, you can like evolve your personal fashion style or something like that. But it's like weird to like learn a entirely new category of thing about yourself and what you like in your personal expression.
Just to turn this a little bit more towards like if it's making you think about your practice differently and stuff like that. Like, I know that scent is one of those things that we know to be incredibly evocative, right? We know to be really connected to sort of memory, although the thing there in designing for scent is like, it's like cut grass might mean something wonderful to one person, but might be like the worst moment in someone else's life for all that we know. So that's a tough thing about design. But every now and then there's an academic thesis or a small experiment or a speculative article about like olfactics as the next kind of big step in games, right? I think even Oculus made a feel real. It's all one word in that way when you invent a thing and you have to make it all one word. Feel real. Feel real was like an add-on to the Oculus, which was basically a full face cover, and it had lots of like, it could blow wind into your face, and it could also sort of blow certain chemicals that would smell a certain way, right? But those articles happen, and then no one's particularly like able to really sort of bring them to bear. I think probably the place that I have personally experienced like sense as part of interaction design is probably museums. In the UK, there's a couple of museums. There's the Maritime Fish Museum in Grimsby, which has real fish smells that you can go to.
That's cool.
And then there's also the Jorvik Viking Centre in York, where you sit on a funny little train and go around an exhibit of all these pretend Vikings, and they have a different scent in each of the main sort of Viking eras, which is a mix of like the authentic Viking smell, because I don't know, when you're a child, that's really exciting. Authentic. So like, actually, like, I think museums are probably the place in interaction design that I've known scents to be used the most. But I wonder if you've sort of picked up on other threads in creative technology or in games that I maybe don't know about.
I think so. I've had an experience. So I don't know if you have them over there. You probably do, but they call them 4D movies here.
I know that they exist. I don't know if they're.
It is not.
I'm sure
it's not the fourth dimension, but yeah, like they have these like movies where that go beyond 3D, right? Where you're in one of those like like the moving chairs and stuff, and they like
Mm.
spray water on you and they like pump scents. And I watched. I think we bought like a few friends and I bought tickets to see this movie, and we like didn't realize we bought 4D tickets because it's like the worst movie that you could probably watch with like smells associated. It was the movie It, which is the Stephen King,
Oh,
like the
yeah.
creepy clown in the sewer
Scary
movie.
clown movie 4D experience.
Right, you're like, I want to go see a movie that has smells. Let's go to the fucking clown in the sewer movie. So that was an experience that that like they did pump kind of some kind of smell, and luckily it wasn't like an authentic sewage smell or something. It was just more like a burnt, like a tolerable burnt plastic smell or something. Like I'm so curious about how they designed that smell, because you're like it tells you that this is a bad smell, right? But it wasn't like so disturbing as a smell to like make people like really actually upset or sick, which is really interesting as a design challenge. Well, so besides that, as for like how for me personally this inspires my work, again, as a person who makes um let's say big air quotes interactive media or interactive experiences, like um I feel like I take more inspiration from it in a conceptual level than I don't really have any interest in exploring scent um, literally
Mhm.
in making work for me personally. Though I always think it is really interesting when people um, do try to do those things like you described, um, or do other scent related experiments. I think that stuff is really compelling. Um, I just think that there's something inspiring and compelling about like an unquantifiable, visceral experience linked specifically to like memories and things like that. That it's like it's an interesting reminder of like what makes people feel emotions, right? Because as we try to make games or other things that are or art, right, with the goal of making people experience emotions, it's it's just interesting to think about something so basic as like scent, smell, perfume, something that's so like unattainable, I guess, as a designer of something. I don't know. It's just it's kind of abstract. Again, I just think it's like something that cannot be learned on YouTube
Mm.
is like so interesting to me. Um, and I can't say that it has this like direct, very direct like link to my work, or I have like learnings from perfume that I apply to become more productive or something. But I just think it's really interesting to think about and consider when trying to design experiences that evoke emotions.
For
That
sure,
there's
for
like so many
sure.
things outside of our control. Um, and I don't know, maybe there are ways to sort of take the evocative nature of perfume, something so visceral, and be inspired by it. But again, because it is so by nature elusive and so hard to like put in something like a video game in any kind of like literal way whatsoever, that's what makes it so intriguing and compelling.
Actually, one of the notes I gave the writers on the game Die Gute Fabrik are currently sort of working on, maybe like at alpha, as we were sort of moving towards our sort of final draft of everything, was just remind yourself at the beginning of every new location that they arrive at. So tiny format spoiler, I suppose, for our game. Like ask them like not just what do they see, but like what does it smell like? What's the temperature? What's the weather? What's the humidity? And I think smell is the strongest one of all of those. Like I want to not just when things smell bad, but like is this a place of trade? What does that how does that change the way that the air moves and what hangs heavy on the air? How occupied does the air feel with scent? That, you know, that tells you a bunch of different things about the place. And can we infuse that in the writing? Can a character respond to it? Maybe a character who hasn't traveled very much is smelling something for the first time. What does that feel like? I feel like that's
Totally.
a way of getting at, you know, the ineffability of living, right? Of being a not just a
Yeah.
brain, but also a body in a moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah, I was just thinking like, I mean, it would take someone with real knowledge and expertise, but you know, when we're like designing characters and stuff, we have put together these like sort of character sheets about their personalities and their traumas and their star signs and their quirks and stuff. But like, why not their personal perfume? I mean, it would be, again, that would require somebody who has knowledge about a variety of perfumes. But it's just like kind of an interesting, it's like another, yeah, it's just like another element about people and about our experiences with things. And I think the other thing is that we don't have control over it. Like I have no control over, I can't not smell something, right? And I can't not have a reaction to it. I can't change how I react to a smell. Again, it's that just like on YouTube ability of it. That is so compelling.
I think I'm definitely now adding to all of my character sheet formats their favorite smell and what do they smell of as two different things, because that gets at so much, right? Favorite smell, you're immediately sort of going, okay, so why would they have developed this favorite smell? You're looking for, you know, romances or memories, that kind of thing. Favorite foods. And it also tells you about someone whether or not they're kind of wistful or utilitarian, or like they like, you know, the smell of their work even. And then you have everything that infuses a person. Like someone who works with leather is going to smell different to someone who works in an office, and like all of those things are going to, you know, be a part of them and their skin and their presence around others. Yeah, I think that's a really beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
Definitely borrowing already from this practice, but I've gone quite literal there, and I don't want to get us too far away from actually what you're bringing to the table in this conversation is actually something more unavowable, is the act of like making art, working within any medium to try and reflect on what it is to be a human in the world with a body and amongst other bodies. There are some things which you cannot replicate, that you it's very hard to put under a microscope in the same way as other things which you've described as being a little bit simpler within the means that we have to express. And that doesn't mean that you don't try, right? It doesn't mean that it's not actually really powerful to hold in your head everything you can't tell, because sometimes that makes you lean a little bit further or think in different directions. And there's something really special about the unavowable nature of what you've brought here, not just me taking literal things away.
No, absolutely. And I think, right, I think it's really a good point, a good reminder that it is about the body, right? It's this like physical thing. I mean, yeah, it's about the brain, I guess, as well, if we think of that as separate from the body, which it isn't. But again, I think it's just, I've been reflecting on it a lot just because of how it feels like everything can be digitized, right? We can try to approximate every type of interaction online somehow. And this is one of the few things that we really can't. And there's something so powerful about that.
I mean, thank you for bringing something to us at which you're in the beginning, right? Or in which you're at the beginning.
Oh yeah, I don't know anything, so.
But that's a really generous thing to come and say, I'm in the beginning of this, but it's making me really excited. And sometimes I think the coolest things that people can bring into the show is something that they just suddenly got really excited about. And also that it came to you from a moment of the loss of smell, right? That's just something really interesting. Yeah, I'm really glad for you that it came back. But I know some people with long COVID symptoms, which include, you know, so far permanently disrupted sense of smell, which can be really challenging. So a thing that perhaps we also sort of take for granted, to have it represented to you in that way, really interesting. So I wonder if you have anything sort of bearing in mind our listening audience, Is there anything sort of like you sort of thought you were going to sort of come and offer as part of the podcast that you'd like to share that maybe I haven't sort of, asked a question about so far?
Yeah, I would just say overall that, for those of us who are making games, who are making art, again, making things where we want um, a player or somebody to experience feelings and emotions and memories and things like that. Um, for those, we're trying really hard, using all the methods that we can to make those things happen. And I think that it's just nice to remember we can take some like literal inspirations as you have done, from the sense of smell, right? In terms of like thinking about how we design characters, how we design worlds, or things like that. But I do think it's a nice reminder that the world is more bigger, different than what we're ever going to be able to achieve in a video game. And not even in a way that like I feel like once we have smell-o-vision or something, it's like we can make everything feel 100% like the real world. Not like that, but I just think it's sort of like this like humbling thing to remember. Mm-hmm. That our people's experiences are so personal and like tied to their bodies, as you said, and tied to the world around, and visceral in a way that we can like try to take inspiration from in our work, but also feel totally fine that it's impossible in some ways as well.
Yeah, I think it's a really good tension to hold as a maker of things, is that there is no truth I can imbue this like recreating an experience. There's no thing that I can do which is precisely the same as experiencing this thing, and that doesn't mean that we don't try everything to try and get at the truth from a different direction. The truth of a moment doesn't have to mean replicating it. It actually sometimes can, the whole point of art is sometimes taking a different route, like is making it less like the thing in order to think about the thing. I just really simple examples are like, abstract art as a way of getting towards different essences and all of that. So yeah, I think that's a really, really valuable tension for any maker to hold, is the impossibility of all of it and the trying nevertheless, right?
Absolutely.
If you've said everything that you wanted to on the subject of perfume, then I just have left asking you if there's anything that you'd like to promote or any socials that we should follow you on.
You can just check out my website, which is nicole.pizza. It has all my projects and things like that. I am still on Twitter. We'll see how long that lasts.
We're going down on that ship. It's just,
we're all going down together. Yeah. My Twitter is Nicole He, just my name, no spaces. That's it.
Wonderful, brilliant, and also your website does have a flying pizza on it. I was enjoying that earlier today. All right, well, thank you so much for your time, Nicole, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of One Cool Thing from Die Gute Fabrik. As usual, leave that rating or review where you can. If this time was valuable to you, then that's a really good way to say thank you. I'll be back soon with a new episode speaking with another cool thinker and maker in the field of video games. And in the meantime, check out Die Gute Fabrik on Instagram, Twitter and YouTube. GUTEFABRIK. This podcast was produced, edited and sound designed by Tom Wally. Additional production and research by Una Ming Kavanagh. And our theme music is by Nick Ellis, whose music you can find under the name 10B on Bandcamp. That's TENBY. Stay thoughtful, friends. Take care. Goodbye.